Is Genshin Impact a good game? Or is it button mashing anime tea and a bait for horny dudes? There's like zero horny in the game. Nobody has canon relationships outside a couple NPC, and while the designs are appealing, I wouldn't exactly call them Coomer bait. I like it. I've been playing a couple years now. You're acting like there aren't women simping for the male characters as well. I definitely wouldn't say Genshin Impact's main demographic is horny 30-yo men. The attractive anime characters are mostly just to encourage people to pay for the gacha gambling. It's pretty easy, but it does have a lot of interesting content, both in terms of gameplay and story. In fact, it has so much that you'll get lost if you try to see all of it. That's intentional, because the feeling of missing out on things is going to get you to either spend all of your time on the game, or start shelling out money for it. Basically, it's a great game for children. They have ample free time, they can't afford the real bot W, and they don't really have to be good at the game to win. Assuming you're past the age of 18, you can find better, cheap games elsewhere. I would not recommend pirating or emulating games though. You absolutely should not do either of those, especially not by consulting one of the many subreddits specifically made for those purposes. I do think Genshin Impact is a good game. There is challenging content in Genshin that requires a combination of good characters, good teams, and good execution. But a lot of the open world exploration is designed to be very easy and fairly mindless, where you can get away with button mashing. But I find the exploration fun too, even if it can be a little dull. There is definitely a lot of story that they put quite a bit of effort in. A lot of the fun and strategy comes from having a lot of characters for a lot of teams in a Genshin though, which can take a while since the game is pretty grindy. I do think Wuthering Waves is worth looking into as well, since I think it's easier to get into, has a lot of improvements over Genshin, better feeling dodges, boss design, faster swapping with more animation cancelling, and has a nice parry system. The main thing Genshin has over it is the elemental reaction system, which adds a lot of depth and complexity to the game, but it will take a bit of time before you can appreciate the many years worth of content the game has over Wuthering Waves. I personally think both games are relatively, but they have their strengths and weaknesses between each other. Genshin Impact is first and foremost a long single-player game that you cannot avoid, second a great exploration open-world game, third a gacha, and fourth not a competitive game with high stakes. Genshin barely had what I'd call TNA. The only horny thing about the game is the fanbase. It's free, just play the fucking game. Yes. I'm 50F and just started last month, and I'm in love with the dreamy ambience. There are 6 beautiful characters of all genders, but they aren't vulgar neither promiscuous, and they all were crafted with obvious care. The world I'm exploring is so beautiful and interesting that I am finding myself just running without even looking at the map, lol. Maybe it's because it's my first gacha and I'm not really a gamer, but I can see all the work and love the creators have put in that game. It's a gacha game, which means most of the premium items characters are locked behind the lucky draw mechanics called gacha, and you will need to spend a lot of money to get your desired items characters quickly. That being said, Genshin Impact is also a purely free to-play game with zero its content locked behind paywall, maybe just 5-6 weapons on the monthly pass, but they are not anything to die for. Being a F2P, you can get everything that a player who's invested thousands of dollars has. Only caveat is, if you can't invest money, you'll have to invest time in game to collect the premium currency to buy these things. If you don't understand this much, you'll end up like that salamander girl complaining in the comments, lol. Furthermore, Genshin is a casual game with a teen ESRB rating, which means it has a wide player base ranging from 13 or kids to older people. So some content may seem stupidly childish, yet there are some truly horrible WTF story moments. The game has a very deep lore and content as of now to go for months of playtime. The combat is unique but simple. Simple only if you actually bother reading, which is now a popular meme about Genshin player being clueless for not reading what the game is trying to tell. I just started playing again recently. Love the world building, story, graphics, soundtrack. It is simply a really solid single-player RPG. You don't have to spend money to enjoy it, as it's not difficult enough to require it, but you get enough currency to have a shiny new character often enough. As long as you do not interact with the community, except maybe the official subreddit, then you should have a good time if you vibe with it. Genshin has some dark themes scattered around, but if you'd instead prefer a darker atmosphere overall and more difficult combat at the cost of story quality, then look into Wuthering Waves instead. Honestly, while the game is fun, it can be very button-mashy. The characters have a combo where you press the attack button in a sequence, a hold attack where you hold the attack button, a special attack that has a cooldown, and an ultimate attack that becomes available by filling up a meter. That's it. The core combat is very simple. Complexity does start to come in when you start thinking about the team composition of the 4 characters you choose. Each character has a weapon type and an element type. Coordinating the weapons and elements in your team and making them work well together is fun and interesting. Here's another way to look at it. If you are looking for a game like Devil May Cry or God of War with lots of moves and complicated strings of attacks, you will probably be disappointed. If you are looking for a game like Elden Ring with simple combat, but lots of options for customizing how the combat plays out for you, you will have fun. If you've built a new PC, I'd absolutely not recommend you to get into gachas unless you want. Strictly looking for a free-to-play casual game too. Have enough time 5 to 25 min depending on the game every day to do daily tasks. 3. Actively looking for a game with anime style and cute graphics. There are a lot of great games you can play with a strong PC: Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, Ghost of Tsushima, Cyberpunk 2077 with only barrier being you have to pay for them unless you're okay with pirating. It's alright, but I thought the story was just pretty dumb. The gameplay itself was pretty fun, but the premise and the English voices were a little too annoying for me to play it actively. If you can look past that, it's a pretty good game that you would have fun with. The counter fanbase is just really toxic towards it above all else. It's a free game, and there's no shame if you find enjoyment in it. Check it out, and if you don't like it, just uninstall it. Genshin is a good game. It would be a great game if you could roll 10x as often for heroes and weapons for free, even if you had to spend 61 time to buy it as a full game, but it pushes so hard for you to spend hundreds of dollars that I would never recommend it. A bit of both. Hoyoverse games tend to have fantastic plot, both from a literary and from a metaphorical stance. The only reason I stopped playing was because I can't stand gacha mechanics. Both. It is a great game. They are true art in this game. The environment, the music, the aesthetic. But the content is LOT. You can access the world and story for free right on the get-go. There's real story, there's real trial and drama, and just recently, there's real war and deaths going on. But you probably need to spend almost 100 hours of story content to get to the current story. Gacha is for characters and their weapons. You can make do with regular unpaid weapons and characters if you don't care about min-maxing. Strategy mainly involves on combat. It involves combos and timing if you care about min-maxing. There are horny Genshin players, but believe me, it's pretty tame compared to actual bait games. I haven't played in years because the content became stale to me, but I will say when I started and for about a good 2 years there were very magical memorable moments. Climbing Dragonspine Mountain when it first launched, walking in the snow with that BGM as I climbed to the top is one of my top 10 gaming moments.